shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from Snowden, BC, and Orange Juice, Florida, this is West Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and do you know why seagulls fly over the sea? Because if it was over the bay, they'd be bagels. Joining me as usual is a team that will tell you quick animal facts like the vast majority of frogs are not Morphin certified. So this show is also brought to you by our patrons. You too can become a patron and help us grow the show. Go to patreon.com/LATV. And today, in the second half of the show, we'll be talking to John C. Wathey. We'll be talking about his book, The Phantom God. That should be very interesting. But first, let's do our usual chit-chat. And before that, guys, how you doing? I should ask that.
Pretty good.
Just good?
Hanging in there.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing great. Yeah, I had this crazy dream last night that I showed up to the podcast naked, but you know, being here today is like a dream half true. I'm going full Mike Lindell. You don't know.
Fair. I don't know. We went to go see Cocaine Bear last night. Me and my husband and the kids.
Oh,
it is amazing. I do not regret buying money to go see that movie. It was fantastic.
I want to echo what Brent Lee said last week. He says it's great to live in an era now that we can just do stupid things with movies. Yeah, talking about a cocaine bear. Sure, why not? Let's do it.
It's so good. It's based on a true story. Well, not the bear part, but the cocaine that got dropped in a forest near Knoxville, Tennessee. And it was back in the 80s. But they haven't been able to find the cocaine yet. So, and then they just added the cocaine bear, and it was so funny. Well, I loved it.
It's so funny because I heard there was because they were talking about it on Scathing, and they said the bear was true, but it just ate some and died like immediately.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it did, but I don't think the cocaine. But it was great. Okay. It was so much fun.
I just had this vision in my head. It's like, hey, boo boo.
Right?
Well, I thought this pick basket is really working for me. 10
out of 10. I like, if you want to see a stupid movie, please go see this movie. And it sucks because they're not making a whole lot of money because Quantumania was released. So a lot of people are going for, it's a bad time because everybody's going to go see Quantumania instead of Cocaine Bear. So,
yeah.
I'm just waiting for the children's spin-off, Cocaine Creatures. Never mind.
Well,
I should have worked on that joke before
cocaine hamster, cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do you guys ever read Dilbert? You ever heard of Scott Adams?
Oh, yeah, he's crazy.
Well, the once popular comic strip creator has been very vocal in the last few years in his support for Donald Trump, amongst other things. Well, the cartoon Dilbert has been dropped from numerous U.S. papers in response to a racist rant by its creator on YouTube. So,
God,
Adams.
I just remember the old cartoon, and I can't imagine Dilbert being that racist. It's like it's like lockdowns weren't kind to Dilbert. He kind of got radicalized by the.
Seriously, yeah.
So Scott Adams called Black Americans a quote hate group, and suggested white Americans, quote, get the hell away from black people, in response to a conservative organization's poll purporting to show that many African Americans do not think it's okay to be white. Okay, first of all, let's do some fact checking on that poll, please.
Right? What does that mean? Like, when you're deciding whether or not to be white, you know, they're like, not for you choosing. What?
I don't understand what that means.
That's cherry picking in response. There's got to be more to that than just
right.
Absolutely.
Adams' initial remark came in response to a conservative Rasmussen poll that appeared to show that 26% of black respondents said they disagreed with the statement, quote, it's okay to be white. There's got to be more to that. And another 21% said they were not sure. So it's okay to be white as opposed to what?
Right. But I think because the people that run around saying, "Hey, it's okay to be white," are there's usually other things they say as well.
Yes, exactly. This is cherry picking, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So, however, Rasmussen also said the online and phone survey last week, 1,000 likely U.S. voters showed that 72% of Americans overall agree it's okay to be white, compared to 12% who disagree. Quote, if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, that's a hate group, Adams said on his YouTube channel Wednesday. And I don't want to have anything to do with them.
Wow.
Well,
as you can imagine,
professional policy, right?
As you can imagine, the comments ignited a furor over social media, amongst with calls with cartoonists' work to be dropped from publishers' rosters. Of course, his once popular comic strip, which I never understood why, I hate that comic strip, which lampoons corporate culture and was launched in 1989, will no longer be carried by the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the USA Today, affiliated groups of newspapers, and others. The newspaper announced in statements Friday and Saturday. So,
cancel culture strikes again.
Yeah. I can say
why can't the radical left just let people be racist? It serves so many people so well. Why wouldn't the left just let the right bring back racism?
Okay.
Before we get into trouble,
a quick bet among us. Who wants to bet a virtual $20, whatever you want to call it, that the next stop he's going to be doing the circuit run along Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and all these shows? Who wants to bet that would be? That's
They always double down. And they always double down and martyr themselves. He'll be carrying his cross on the Tucker Carlson. They want to nail me to this thing.
They won't let me be racist enough.
So they just won't pay me to be racist, while being.
Oh yeah, you can be racist. We're not going to get money.
Cancel culture is allowing me to not be racist. I can't be racist because of cancel culture. Where's my freedom?
Free speech. Free speech.
Thanks, Biden, you dictator. I can't be racist anymore.
You can be racist. You just can't be public about it because that's a bad look.
That's actually true. Yeah. Unfortunately, that is the case.
It's what they don't seem to understand. If you want to be racist, and I don't recommend you do, but if you want to be racist in your head, just leave it there, okay? Just leave it there. Don't go in public and start saying these stupid things, you moron.
No, yeah.
Anyway.
You just have to do your dog whistling. You don't it's we live in Florida. DeSantis says wokeness when kids can't say blackness. So that's how you got to do dog whistling, and that's how you slide under the bars.
Yeah, exactly. They have a whole nomenclature set up just for the dog whistles.
Right.
Yeah, you just got to be a clever racist.
You have to be clever racist. Yeah, exactly.
I had a friend of mine a long time ago who had this wonderful venture. He hated people from Parador. He hated them. He would say this nastiest thing about Parador. And I said to him, Parador? Where the hell is that? He says, it doesn't exist. It's a country between Ecuador and Paraguay, and I just made it up. So you just put all his racism on these imaginary people from Parador.
I was going to say, the Nari, the big blue people? Are they, what?
They're terrible.
Oh, my bad.
It was just brilliant, to be racist towards the Parador people.
That's great.
Can't stand those Paradorians.
They ruin everything. That's funny.
Okay, in other news, when I was a kid, TikTok was the name of a crocodile in Peter Pan. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Now,
was that his name?
Well, that was a sound.
I did not know that.
It was the noise he made.
That's the noise.
He swallowed. If I remember the story correctly, he swallowed some kind of clock, and then when he would approach, and you would hear the tick tock coming.
Yeah.
So now TikTok, the app TikTok, finds itself under increased scrutiny on both sides of the Atlantic, as Western countries are casting a critical eye on the reach of the Chinese-owned platform, which holds and the risk it may pose. Canada, right here, as actually a federal government privacy regulator and 3 provincial counterparts this week launched a joint probe into whether the social media platform meets privacy law expectation and how it collects and makes use of data. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has separately said the country's electronic spy agency is also watching for threats from TikTok. The fuss about all this particular app, one of those many apps in social media, it's the fact that it's the ownership and the company has ties to the Chinese Communist government. And right now, geopolitical tensions are on the rise. But there's also a few things that apparently people don't know about TikTok. Apparently, if you have the TikTok app on your phone, and of course, most of us, they'll just scroll down. We don't really read the fine print, and we just agree. But apparently, the TikTok app has actually access to everything on your phone, and we're talking even your incoming texts and stuff like that. They have access to all of it. So this is why they're launching these programs to see if this is actually going way beyond. And I frankly don't understand why a company like TikTok would need to know that I just sent a message to Troy about, hey, you got to meet me for lunch at 2:00 or something. I don't understand why they would need to know that. But anyway.
Yeah. And then I just reply, sure, stop sending me dick pics.
Closer to home, a growing list of U.S. states have reportedly banned the app from government phones. There are also restrictions in place for U.S. federal government employees, with some exceptions. About 26% of adults in Canada are on TikTok, according to a census-based online survey taken last spring. That was up from 15% 15% 2 years earlier. 76% of Canadian adults aged 18 to 24 have TikTok accounts, according to that same 2022 survey. In the U.S., by August 2020, the official number of U.S. TikTok users was 100 million, based on the quarterly usage. That was up 800% from January 2018, the company figures. eMarketer estimates suggest that TikTok has 73.7 million monthly active users in the U.S. and is forecast to reach 88.7 million by 2024. So,
wow.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to keep an eye on. And, frankly, I know. I mean, I'm the first one. When you agree to something, you don't read the fine print. But it's all in. I mean, I thought of getting a TikTok account for Left of the Valley, and I see the appeal to it. My girlfriend kind of does these little TikTok videos, especially when she's working out. But I absolutely see the appeal of it. But it's like, Jesus, that's a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, I think what really bugs me with TikTok is if someone shares a link on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, whatever, you always have the option of viewing it through your web browser if you don't have the app. Not TikTok. Like, if you want to see what's on their platform, you have to download and install their software. And it is, and for me, that's just like a little bit of a red flag. Maybe I'm a little bit paranoid, but it's a when I listen to what Kevin says, then that kind of makes sense. It's they want you on the app no matter what because they want that information, but.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder also, I mean, I know they're using this big communist government scare thing, but I'm just wondering, beyond, I almost feel that's a red herring. Why does a private company, even if a capitalist one, need that information for, right? Why do they need that much information on you? I understand they're trying to get the algorithm to sell you shit. I get that. But I mean, that's a bit much, You don't really need to see every aspect of my life.
Well, rewind a couple years back to Cambridge Analytica, where Facebook had sold off a whole bunch of their information on people's private information, and then you had political lobbies and groups take that commercial information, create personality profiles for users, and then they could specifically target political propaganda and fake news and other stuff to target specific users. So if China wants to influence in Canadian politics, which they have, according to CSIS, it's getting information for getting all that private information is going to allow them to build a very powerful database on where to send which propaganda, who will believe what, how to format the stories for different users. It's a there is a nefarious motivators there to have all that information. It's not much we can do about it other than just not use the app. But
right, yeah. I mean, isn't that like what what's his name got in trouble for with Facebook?
Zuckerberg.
Where he had to have the booster seat in court, because he was so tiny.
Yeah, well, part of that was linked to the Cambridge issue, if I recall.
Oh, right. Thank you for that, guys. My dear Helen, do you have a top 10 for us today?
I do. So
that's fantastic.
I do, because I decided, because we were talking about this morning with me and my husband and my kid. We're doing the 10 of the most dangerous toys ever made. So, if any of you have
lawn darts.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was going to say lawn darts. Yep.
Okay. So, number 10 is the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab.
What?
So this is a product of the 1950s. And what it was designed to do was basically you could do like little atomic experiments with it. But and it was supposed
congratulations,
to be
little Timmy has leukemia. No.
The atomic energy was used for educational purposes. It contained ore samples that had uranium that made it perfect to be characterized as highly dangerous for kids.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and it came with like a little mini Geiger counter.
What? Here's how to split it, kids. You put it.
I'm just imagining a mom putting her kid to bed at night. And it's like, why is little Timmy glowing?
And we got the Hulk. That's it.
That's it.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. Okay, so the number 9 is the Austin Magic Pistol. It's okay. Anyway, the Austin Magic Pistol is another toy that was built in the 1950s when nobody considered guns to be dangerous. It took something unusual for a weapon to be that prominent. So, the mode of operation of this pistol was mixing calcium carbide with water. Hence, generating a fiery explosion that would send a ping pong flying more than 60 miles per hour.
Oh, that's how you make potato guns, man.
Yeah.
Calcium carbide.
I hate to say it, but still to this day, the U.S. still doesn't find anything dangerous like guns.
It's actually gotten worse now.
It's gotten a lot worse, yeah.
Bring that toy back. It's probably safer than what you guys have today.
Right? Replace it. I'll take that over the AR-15 any day. Yeah.
So, if you paid any attention to chemistry class, you'll recall that very houses things happen when you mix things with water, like calcium carbonate. Right. When used correctly, it can't be dangerous, but the problem is that children start shooting their playmates with it, and you can ping pong ball going 60 miles per hour. Yeah.
Good night. Yeah, they gotta have like lumps all over the place. Like,
all right. So we all mentioned
didn't use ping pong balls. They used just about anything that was round that was that same shape, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, the golf ball or anything that size. Like, oh yeah, that's the same shape.
So we did mention lawn darts. It's number 8 because these are one of the most dangerous toys.
I remember playing with lawn darts where the way we used to play is you stand in the circle and you throw the lawn dart up in the air, and if you move out of the circle, you lose. And apparently apparently that killed a few kids. That wasn't how you were supposed to play. That's just how we would play. I remember one time like having to swat a lawn dart in midair so that it wouldn't strike me.
Yeah, it killed 10 children at least. Yeah. Which is crazy. And
it was a really fun game though.
I played them. I remember them. We didn't do the circle and let's chance stay part. No, we didn't play lawn dart chicken. This made the Consumer Product Safety Commission to ban it and authorize the complete destruction of any other sets that have been manufactured. So at least one after 10. I think after one child death, maybe you should take it up.
I wonder if you found an original set of those lawn darts today if they go for a high price for collectibles.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet you could eBay check it on eBay or something.
I was thinking the other day if I could actually make some, because like all you would have to do is buy the ones that they have now with the plastic balls on the end. Take that apart and just attach like a metal tip, and then voila, you got your own lawn dart. Something that actually sticks in the ground instead of bouncing out of the circle after it lands.
Dude, we used to have this real quick. I used to have this fan that we called it the Hurricane because it would just go so fast. It would blow everything in the whole room. Just would, paper would go everywhere. And if you put it on the highest setting, right? and we would tape pens to the fan, and then we'd all like turn it on, and all of us would go run and hide while there's like just fire, like a machine gun fire everywhere. It was awesome.
Toys weren't fun unless they were dangerous.
Right. Well, to be fair,
parents back then didn't care. It's just don't bother them, and it's and they're fine. It's
letting kids play with uranium apparently was a thing to do. So.
We didn't learn shit from Madame Curie at all.
Right.
Jesus.
So this is a splash-off water rocket. So this toy sold in 1997. It was a significant death trap because once the rockets were filled with water, it could blast off once the pressure was high enough. However, sometimes the missiles could not take off and they would detonate on the hands of the child.
Oh.
Over 37 reports of children suffering lacerations were reported, and the toys were taken off the market.
And that's why they banned bottle rockets also.
Did anybody ever play with those actual rockets? Like, did it? Remember those? Are you like
the bottle rockets?
No, not the bottle. Like it's like an actual space rocket, right? And
you can set them off on your lawn. And I didn't play with them, but a couple of my neighbors had them, like the boys in my neighborhood, and I remember them going off, but my parents wouldn't buy them for me.
But you lose them every time. It's like you go up almost in the stratosphere. Like
what they don't say about all these toys is this is how Generation X did their survival game. You know, if you died as a kid, there was a Darwin Award. You got eliminated from the gene pool.
Exactly.
Gen Xers are pretty badass these days. Like, I don't want to mess with these guys. These guys are like nasty.
We are the don't know, don't care generation.
That's why we have do not eat on paint these days. You know what I mean? It's like, you should have just taken that off. They want to eat paint, let them eat paint. Okay? Just get them out of here. You know,
it's a break with your Tide Pod. We used to eat paint.
I mean, like, there's still label warnings to not put your toaster in the bathtub. So, you know, just saying.
Well, how am I going to have my toast? This is bullshit. Bullshit.
Ever had a bathtub full of Eggo waffles? It's amazing.
I like breakfast in bed, but in the tub.
So, the next one is Snack Time Cabbage Patch Doll. This is number 6. So these dolls are the reason why. They were made from mechanical jobs that you could feed these little plastic snacks to the doll. However, the dolls could not be able to differentiate between food and the fingers of a child, obviously. And therefore, and there's like if I was watching a video, it actually has like a metal part in the back of the throat of the doll. And also too, like it would literally like chew on the child's fingers, and it would cause like cuts and lacerations on children. So,
oh my god,
yeah.
It's like
if I remember, hair used to get cut. Like it would eat hair also too, and like it would just like keep on eating the hair until it's like launched right to the side of the head. So it's like your doll all of a sudden becomes your Siamese twin or something. It's like,
oh my god!
I'm just glad those kids are just putting their fingers in there. It could have been way worse,
right? It can get a little weird.
Everybody.
A little weird. Number 5 are Aquadots. This is one of the most prominent toys in 2007. The toy contains small, colorful beads. I missed this toy. I was too old. That could be assembled into any design of your choice, because when the dots were sprinkled with water, they would glue together. As the water activated, there was a coating of beads fusing them together. However, several reports were made of children who lapsed into comas and others vomiting after ingesting the beads. Oh, God. The reason why, research revealed that the glue after ingestion was metabolized into gamma hydroxybutyrate, other known as the date rape drug.
Oh my God. Yeah. DHB. Holy shit.
But want to hear something additionally fucked up? The dots were sadly rebranded and are still sold today.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wait, can you get me the?
It's part of the Cosby line, I take it, or
it's part of the Cosby.
Where can we find these dots?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't have a desire to go searching for date rape beads.
For other stuff. Sometimes you just want to zonk out for a bit.
Right?
Okay?
Exactly. Yeah.
Bradley's going to be song coming in his bathtub full of Eggo waffles.
Oh.
With my toaster in there. Yeah.
All right. So number 4 is the Hannah Montana Pop Star card game. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that toys should not contain over 40 ppm of lead. Oh my God. Because it's the second most
toxic paper
after arsenic. So they did laboratory tests, revealed that these cards contain 75 times lead, the level of which is in excess.
Holy shit.
But they
board game. You can't think like that, but how are we going to play cards without the lead, though?
I don't know how this, it's a game. I don't know, a card game. I don't know how lead got into the cards. I don't understand. But apparently, it's because the lead was in the vinyl that's covering the cards. But they were not banned from the market. It said these cards were not banned from the market because apparently the lead was in the vinyl and not the paint, something that had not been covered by regulations.
Well, you can always count on Disney on circulating the
guy in the factory is like, no, look, it's in the fine print. See, you can actually put it in the vinyl. It's okay.
Yeah, we're fine. Like, well, we're going to poison children, but it's okay.
It's a loophole. It's a loophole. Jesus.
Number 3 are inflatable baby boats. These boats nearly caused at least 30 kids to drown in 2009. Apparently,
not a very good boat.
No, it's not a float. It's not a very good boat float.
Not a very good boat, baby boat. Baby boat, hot water burn, baby, something. Okay,
that's a nightmare. Not only would you think, but the plastic and all that would kind of wrap around you and pull you down. Like.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it helps keeping it, but the straps of the legs could tear, making the baby slip into the water. The annoying thing for the manufacturer is that Aqua Leisure was aware of the problem for 6 years, but they did not take action. However, the CPSC caught up with them and fined the company over $65,000, $650,000, $650,000. Yeah,
it's still a slap on the wrist for a company.
That is not a lot of money because I'm sure they made a lot. They're probably a multi-million-dollar toy company. You know that's not the only product they made. You know, so $650,000 is like $650 to us.
Yeah.
You know,
nothing. Jeez. That's true.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Okay, number 2 is Magnetex. Kids will put almost anything they come across in their mouths, but manufacturers tend to forget about this. So I remember these. I thought they were really cool. Like I was a little too old for them, but I remember seeing commercials for these, and I was like, "Oh, those look so much fun!" If I was still a kid. The Magnetex contain building sets made of plastics that you could break open, spilling small and powerful magnets that curious toddlers would quickly put in their mouths and swallow them. This is very dangerous for the digestive system because these would form huge lumps that would cut off the blood supply to critical organs when they twist in the intestines. We all know that a stomach death is one of the worst ways to die. Yeah. So
I'll be honest though, like sometimes you kind of got to blame the parents too, though, because like I bought these for my son when he was like 8 or 9, not when he was like 5 or 6, and it's like when you're buying toys that you're not supposed to eat. You buy them for your older kids, not your younger ones.
I have a feeling they did, and they had a toddler in the house.
Yeah, people have more than one kid. That's the
I don't think anyone was buying this for like their 2-year-old, but they probably had like an 8 or 9-year-old bought it for them, and then left the room. You know, and their kid broke it open, and then the toddler got a hold of the little beads and ingested magnets. You know, I can totally see that happening.
If you break enough of them and feed them to your kid, and then he's magnetic, and then you just stick him onto a fish.
He's like Spider-Man from then on, just like.
Must be all these QAnon people that thought the vaccine gave him magnets. And
now we know why.
So, again, there's a 22-month-old baby that died after ingesting it. However, again,
I'm just so awful for making jokes.
That's not funny.
The toy was rebranded as Mega Bloks in 2008.
Oh, I love Mega Block. What?
I know.
Oh, man.
I'm going to do an honorable mention before I get to number 1 that my son told me about. So apparently there was a motorized pogo stick and when Pogo was super popular. And what happened was that it was supposed to be like you would go down and it would shoot you straight up in the air at a higher rate. But the thing is, though, and it was went really fast, but sometimes the motor wouldn't go off correctly, and it would go at an angle, and you're traveling of a speed of a car.
Oh, Jesus! What the?
Yeah.
Pogo sticks are dangerous enough, and they're like, let's strap a motor on.
And some kids died. So, yeah, that was a thing.
I think some of these inventors were watching too many Wile E. Coyote cartoons, where they're strapping rockets to shoes and stuff.
Acme needs to stop making toys. Is the point, right?
Number one.
You lost your number one.
I have to clock it. Hold on a minute.
I think the motorized pogo stick is pretty good for one. Who would get on pogo sticks freaked me out even when I was age appropriate for them, and putting a motor on it does not help that at all.
I'm imagining my younger self taking a tube, a baseball, and one of those pogo sticks and making myself a freaking cannon to shoot crap with. Anyway, maybe I was just a little bit too ingenuitive when I was younger. I don't know, but it's
innovator. Yeah,
I would have had fun with something like that.
We got to move on, guys. Perfect.
Yeah, I lost audio for a second, so I apologize. So the last one is the CSI fingerprint examination kit. So those of you, I don't know how many 10-year-olds were watching CSI, but it was a thing. And you were going around trying to solve a crime for a robbery or whatever. But it also enabled children to look for fingerprints. But what happens was there's kids developing skin problems, and after investigations were done in 2000, revealed that the powder contained asbestos, a chemical element that causes cancer in the long run. This made the kit be banned from the market.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Asbestos.
Asbestos. Yeah, you can actually. There's still lawsuits going on to this day that if you have asbestosis or something, asbestosis, you can still get money. From lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Thank you so much, Helen. Troy, how long is your segment, buddy? Do we have time?
Oh, it's
mine's short, so
I cut it a little bit, but either way, I'll get going and we'll see how we do.
Okay,
Pythagoras. Everybody remembers Pythagoras from high school, right?
Yes.
A squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So what people don't know is actually, for starters, he didn't even create that term. The Babylonians have been were using it for 1,000 years before him, but he just got credit for it.
Oh.
One really cool thing that he did do, just so we can talk him up a little bit, is he created the first music scale and methods in writing music that we still use today. He was able to basically record and measure the different tones of music, so that created a writing structure, and it's we can thank him for the music theory that we have today.
Cool.
But so why are we talking about math and music? Well, a lot of people don't realize this. He was also a crazy ass cult leader, and like a really big cult. He made ridiculous, fantastic claims. He had some really crazy beliefs. And when people think about crazy, forgotten cults in history, the last thing they think of is the vegetarian math cult.
I thought you were talking about Christianity. I'm sorry. Go on. No, my bad. My bad.
Yeah.
First of all, Christianity is not vegetarian or math. So
that's what threw me off. 3 is pi. Pi is 3. What?
Yeah, it's vegetarian pie. I think one thing that's important to one thing that's important to point out, though, this was all before the scientific method, which everybody knows is supposed to weed out human error, biases, and baseless philosophical, mythological BS that people use to try to explain things they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happens when we don't have the oh my goodness, scientific method to weed?
Words are hard, Troy. I understand. Words are hard.
Words are hard. I keep on trying to skip past stuff to make up time, and then I lose my spot.
That's all right.
But either way, so Pythagoras created a crazy number worshipping cult. To his credit, he could at least apply elaborate mathematics to justify his mythological beliefs, or at least to a very uneducated public. But here's the 411 on Pythagoras' early life. He was born in Samos. He was a bit of a young Sheldon. He studied advanced mathematics, astronomy. He stoically focused on his pursuit of knowledge, achieved high levels of education, and started a cult worshipping the number 10, which was season 1, episode 11 of Young Sheldon. Pythagoras spent 10 years studying in Egypt, but when Egypt was invaded, he became a prisoner and was shipped off to Babylon, where he ended up studying with astrological priests known as the Magi. Around 520 BCE, he returned to Samos, where everybody was like, wow, you're like really smart. You like start a school or something? So he did start a school called the Semicircle, which seemed to be on the up and up. But he eventually moved to another city called Croton in southern Italy, where he uses wits and charms to climb the social ladder, becoming an advisor to nobles and elites. Again, folks were like, wow, you think it's really good at, will you build a school so we can think it's really good at too? So,
Did you say the name of the city was Croton?
Croton.
Croton, okay.
If I pronounce it
It's like
correctly.
Croton, but it's just a city instead of
Yeah, it's just a city. But either way, so even though they asked him to build a school, Pythagoras was like, I heard crazy-ass math cult based on my godly understandings and divine knowledge. So if you haven't guessed things, this is where things start to get a little bit weird. Pythagoras' math. Yeah, I know.
Because this hasn't been weird yet.
Oh, it gets weird.
I wonder when we were going to get weird here, but okay.
Yeah, okay. Pythagoras' math cult, aka the Pythagoreans, had some really crazy beliefs. For starters, to join the cult, school, you needed to take a 3-year probation period. They'd test your demeanor and attitude, take all your belongings, and forbid you from speaking. You could only listen. Successful applicants would be broken up into groups: the akoustametikoi, the listeners, or the mathematikoi, the learners. The listeners formed the outer circle and focused on spiritual teachings. There was no question asking. You just sat there listening to Pythagoras through a veiled curtain, unable to see him. Suddenly learning through Zoom during the pandemic doesn't seem so bad. The learners, on the other hand, formed the inner circle and would focus on studies, discoveries, and mathematic practices. This made the cult's, school services a valuable commodity. They would live together with other learners, isolated from the outside world to maintain secrecy. Beliefs get pretty complicated, so I'll try to summarize. Pythagoras would use creative mathematics to explain patterns throughout the natural world, and through using what we might consider common denominators and rational numbers and ratios, he was able to prove how the mysteries of the cosmos and all of existence functioned. They would worship and sacrifice animals to these numerical understandings, but never sacrifice white roosters, and I don't know why. The numbers they worshipped... Yeah.
Just the red ones, because fuck those red ones,
Every other is fine.
I want to know. I know you don't know why, but I want to know why. Like, what was the thing about the white roosters that, like, this is too far?
It's white privilege.
I don't know. Yeah. It gets kind of crazy. It might have something to do with reincarnation, because, like, there's a thing I'm going to get to a little bit later that is, like, pretty crazy that's related to reincarnation. But back to the numbers. The numbers they worshipped was the number 1, the individual number that was both even and odd, the cosmic calm that makes all numbers. Number 2 represented women. Number 3 represented men and was the holiest number. Number 5, being the sum of 2 and 3, represented marriage. Number 7 was the wisest number. 8, the number symbolizing justice. But number 10, the ultimate number, was able to define everything. They worshipped number 10 the most. And then, of course,
this is like numerology in a whole different context.
Oh yeah,
numbers don't exist, man. Like numbers aren't real. Okay,
you can't land on a fraction, man. Okay,
I feel bad for 6. Nobody's worshiping 6. Why not
4? There was a thing for 6 too. I just got it. It just wasn't that interesting. So their love for the number 10 can be shown to be preferred by nature. E.g., we got 10 fingers, 10 toes. Their school logo, the Tetractys, I think that's what they called it, which is a large triangle made up of 9 smaller triangles with 10 points within it and 4 rows. The triangle shows how you can add 1, 2, 3, and 4. It makes an equilateral triangle, thus proving how number 10 is the creator of everything that's worthy of worship. Yeah, it makes sense to a primitive society. We'll just leave it at that.
Right there, man. That's pretty solid.
That was a lot of word salad. I'm trying
Jordan Peterson.
It's still a better mythology than Christianity at this point. I'm still better. I'm more sold on this right now than Christianity.
You're sold on the math cult.
I'd much rather worship math. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be better.
So the ratios he found within music also made convincing arguments for his mathematical universe and harmony. It was also his math. Even though his math was bleh. Man, I'm having a bad time today.
That's what math is to me too. I get it.
Because you're so good with word story.
Exactly.
We do a podcast.
Either way, it wasn't that his math was technically wrong, except for when it was. But he definitely thought it was his theories and myths and stuff were right for all the wrong reasons. They also believed they also believed in reincarnation, and the goal in life was to reach enough knowledge of enlightenment to escape the pattern of reincarnation and go to math heaven.
That sounds like a
What's
to hang out with numbers. It's like being in an episode. It's like hanging out with Sesame Street.
Right?
Exactly.
You know, those like big foam numbers that would just hang out. You know,
you just go right to the pearly gates and you hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's the worship song.
5.
Pythagoras was also the first person to believe the Earth was round. He couldn't explain why. It was just a lucky guess. A less lucky guess was he also thought there was a second Earth hiding behind the sun.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Well,
okay.
Well, there could be. It might still be hiding. We don't know.
It could be there.
I can't see back there.
It's the evil version of
It's hiding. That's how you know. You can't see it.
Yeah. The funny thing is a lot of the stuff that he was saying in his religion, you can get hints of it in like ancient Babylonian beliefs too, where he spent a lot of time. So a lot of this stuff he's probably just stealing from other places. But either way, his cult, school, believed in 2 main tenets. A root of spiritual salvation, which played into the reincarnation thing, and keeping the body pure. Their pursuit of knowledge made these math sages incredibly useful for civic management and engineering in their time. So as crazy as they may have seemed, their cult was extremely valuable to the public. The cult just believed that they were unraveling the cosmic order to become one with the universe, and Pythagoras was leading the way. What I thought was kind of interesting about this is how, if you remember the Heaven's Gate cult in the year 2000, they made most of their money basically creating web pages and stuff that other people couldn't do. So I just thought that was kind of like a repeat of history moment.
Yeah,
but
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Either way, this brings us to our cult leader. School headmaster, Pythagoras. At this point, like most cult leaders, he began to become bigger than life, and myths began to form around him.
Oh boy!
Like being bitten by a snake and biting the snake back, and the snake dying, Chuck Norris style.
Did he bite its head off or something?
Apparently, just bit it in the side, and it's like Pythagoras was venomous. I don't know. He had a hip of solid gold. And apparently the evidence of this is one time he was at a Coliseum and he showed everybody one time, and that's the proof that he had a golden hip.
Sounds like a James Bond villain, but like a B-side line, you know?
Golden
Kmart. Yeah.
My Triangle of Doom. No.
The man with the golden hip.
Yeah. Exactly.
So either way, so he also made a deal with the god Saturn so he could remember his lives from previous incarnations.
I'm getting L. Ron Hubbard vibes.
This whole absolutely.
Well, he would tell stories about how he could remember how he and Achilles fought off the Trojans.
Oh yeah.
Even future reincarnations where it was a U.S. congressman named George Sortos or Santos or whatever his name is. He
they both
could
work.
speak to.
That's all right.
Yeah. Don't say that. We might actually hear Santos say that for real. I used to be Pythagoras.
It sounds like a lie he would tell. So he'll just add it to his bag of lies.
Yep.
So Pythagoras could also talk to animals, including one story where he recognized a dog who was a friend that died earlier in his life. It's a apparently somebody was beating this dog, and it's like, hey, that's my friend. I can tell by his whining.
What happened to you, man? Last time I saw you, were human.
Maybe he is taking man's best friend just a little too far.
Oh, Phil's humping my leg. Oh, memories. No.
Oh no! Oh no!
So he could also predict earthquakes, calm storms, and seas, stop the wind, and even levitate.
Ooh, fancy.
Now, if his mythical powers don't impress you enough, did I mention he's a friggin' demigod?
Oh.
He was also claimed to be the son of Apollo.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, it's a.
Okay.
Yeah, the fact checking doesn't work on that one.
He trained Rocky, and then Rocky won that one. He finally won.
When he was levitating, somebody hit him with a lawn dart, and that's why he banned the toys.
That's what it is.
That's right.
So either way, you can't.
That checks out. Totally.
But you can't have a school without rules, and so some of these rules at the school did make sense, like regularly exercising. Not eating food that has fallen on the ground. They didn't have a 3-second rule back then. We can get behind stuff like that. But because they believed in incarnation, they were hardcore vegans, with the exception of eating their sacrifices. They wouldn't cause any harm to any animals, including fava beans. Scratch that, especially fava beans, which Pythagoras believed was reincarnated souls. So if you eat or harm fava beans, it ranked right in there with cannibalism.
Jeez, what is it? A fetus? This is crazy. What's going on?
What fumes was he inhaling? What drugs were he on?
Pythagoras reincarnated Eli Bosnick.
Right.
Like most cult leaders, is just like not having anybody around them to say, "Are you sure about that?"
Right. Well, that's stupid.
I'm like, Hannibal Lecter, had fava beans with a human liver. So, maybe he's on the right track. I don't know. I'm not going to judge.
That could be like an Easter egg in the movie. I don't know. So more bizarre rules were you had to avoid all public roads. You couldn't pee towards the sun. Which peeing towards the wind I can understand. The sun, I don't get it.
Might put it out.
He might put out the sun. Aim higher. You always had to wear white clothes. You always had to take your right shoe off first. You couldn't break bread at the table. They did practice a type of communion with wine, though. You couldn't fart because when you farted, you lost part of your soul.
But
how do you handle that one, man?
How do you handle that?
Don't eat fava beans.
Apparently, but if you're vegan, you're eating like a lot of vegetables, and vegetables make you gassy.
Right? Well, they get butt plugs for that. It's like you're plugging up with this. Yeah.
You can burp it out. You just can't fart it.
Jesus.
You have to just have to do like your silent but deadly
farting into a jar. Save the soul. Blah 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 blah. So and then the most important rule of Pythagoras Club was you do not talk about Pythagoras Club, and of course, which is that's usually the rule that most cults follow.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest reason for this is they believe that their secrets were apparently too dangerous for the world to be aware of. So it's a
oh yeah.
So that's why you don't tell everybody about how crazy you are. This meant limited contact with people outside the school. Considering members were also expected not to wash or wash as little as possible, the public seemed okay with this.
Gross.
Members also had to remain abstinent, which probably wasn't a problem if you're in a math cult that doesn't bathe.
What is it with cults and not having sex? Like, what is it with cults? Like every time you hear about some crazy fucking cult, they're like, "Don't fuck," and I don't understand why.
I watched a doc one time on that. It'll take too long, but it has to. Part of it has to do with like subduing the person, because like in order to not be wanting to come all the time, you got to avoid certain foods. You got to keep your hormone and testosterone level. It helps pacify you, but it's I can't go into that. And
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. After the show, we'll do that.
But Pythagoras' reason for this though was because just like farts, every time you shot off some of your love custard, you lost a bit of your soul also. So it's a
apparently you only have so much soul to hold on to, and then like you just kind of
you just fall over
little bits of your soul flying away.
The Donald Trump school of faxing.
And of course, like all leaders, it's he broke his own rules and had 3 children with one of his students.
Of course.
He also didn't get along with all his students, mainly one fellow called Hippasus, if I pronounce that properly, who was doing math one day, and while doing so, he tried to find the square root of 2, thus discovering the existence of irrational numbers and debunking their core belief that all numbers were rational. So, like any student who thinks that he's actually in a school and not a crazy-ass cult led by a madman, he took this quagmire to his teacher, as it throws a major wrench into their belief system. So Pythagoras was like, I see the problem. Let's go on a boat ride, and we can work on this problem together. So Pythagoras and his inner circle takes Hippasus out to the middle of the sea and was like, "Hey, Hippasus or Hippasus, remember that irrational number problem you came to me with? Well, this is me fixing the problem." And then he has his guys throw him overboard, and he holds Hippasus' head underneath the water. He's like, fixing the problem until he drowns him. He then turns to his followers and says, "Anybody else wants to ask me about irrational numbers?" And they're like, "What irrational numbers? That's just fake news from the left-wing scribes." So by the time Pythagoras reached an old age, he had major political control and influence over the people and the leaders of Croton. The city his cult was established in had pretty much depended on their expertise and stuff, so he had a lot of clout. So when a neighboring city demanded the return of some refugees who fled to the city, Pythagoras organized the Crotonians and his ringer Milo the wrestler, which was a famous Olympic wrestler at the time who went to war cosplayed as Hercules. And they ended up burning the other city, Sybaris, to the ground. And nothing is more embarrassing than having your butt kicked by a vegan math club. No offense to vegans out there.
All right.
So
in conclusion?
Conclusion, after wiping the city out, the people of Croton decided, hey, let's form a democracy, in which Pythagoras, like all cult leaders, did not like surrendering his power. So there was some conflict. Being a numbers guy, you think he'd realize that the numbers weren't on his side. He stuck to his guns, and the Crotonians, whatever, if I said that right, ended up coming to his temple during worship, setting on fire to try to get him outside. Apparently, some of his followers laid themselves on top of the fire so that he could escape. And so they head out the back door, and they're running from the mob until they come across a field of fava beans. His followers dart right through the field. Pythagoras sticks to his guns, whatever. And it's like, I'm not going to kill anybody by stepping on them. Mob catches up to him, catches him, slaughters him, and that's the end of Pythagoras.
Jesus.
Wow.
All because of fava beans.
Yeah. As crazy as he was, though, like he has major influences on mathematics, on music, on Western, on like philosophy, on dualism, and all of that transformed, or didn't transform, but it made its way into Christianity and other parts of our culture. Mm-hmm. So it's like he really was like a major influential person in history. But most of all we remember about him is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But yeah, but the crazy ass cult thing. I wish I remember that. I knew that from math class when I was a kid.
I'll never look at fava beans the same way again. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So, for sure.
Thank you so much, Troy. All right, I'm gonna quickly pause here because John is in there waiting for us. So, Brentley, can we save your segment for next week?
Yeah. Let's just do it next week.
I'm sorry, Brent.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
All right, so let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be with John C. Wathey, and we'll be talking about his book, The Phantom God. So stay with us. All right, our returning champion is Jack Wathey. I just screwed up. Let's do it again.
And 3, 2.
We're professionals. Our returning champion is Jack Wathey. He's coming back in his new book, The Phantom God. He's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Jack, welcome back to the show, my friend. Ooh, round of applause. Look at that.
Great to be back with you.
Jack, it's been a while, my friend. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Maybe you'd be so kind for the people that missed you the last time to give us a quick bio as to who you are.
Sure. My training was, my formal education is in neuroscience. I have a PhD in neuroscience from UC San Diego. So, and I worked in academia for a while. I did a postdoc at the Salk Institute. And then before even trying to get a professorship at a university, I decided I'm not cut out to be a professor for reasons we could go into later if anybody cares. But I went into private industry working on what's called a protein folding problem and protein structure prediction. It's a computational problem, a very challenging one, which, by the way, has recently been solved by a group in England. But I've worked on that for a long time. But in the back of my head, I've always had an interest in religion and where religion comes from, especially what believers describe as the feeling of God's presence. So, very intriguing thing that they usually fall back on when you're arguing with them and you've sort of defeated all of the usual arguments for the existence of God. They'll fall back on this thing. Well, I know God is real because I have felt his presence. So nothing you can say can take that away from me. I don't especially want to take that away from anybody, but I do want to explain it because it's a fascinating question.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, Jack, I gotta say, this whole thing, like you said, you don't feel you're like a professor. To me, sir, you look like a professor. You have that look. The only thing missing is that tweed jacket. You're a good-looking guy and everything. I mean, come on, guys. You're good-looking.
Suede elbow patches. You know.
Yeah, you don't. I just look at him. I just want to listen to his lecture right off the bat, right?
Hello, Jack. That's awful. Okay.
So we won't get into reasons.
We're very serious over here. We're so serious.
You exude to me. You exude like intellect to me. I just look at you as like this guy's like way more brilliant than I am right off the bat. So I'll give you that, Jack. And it's a very
next time you come on, wear a tweed jacket. You will blow Kevin's mind.
Yes, I just want to call him professor as soon as I see him. You just have it.
Okay.
Have that look.
Maybe that was my problem. I needed the jacket back in my early career.
Messed it up. Yep, that's it.
That's a very interesting premise that you want to explain to people that feeling. And like you said, you're absolutely correct. You know, when you bring arguments and try to bring facts and stuff like that to the discussion, they always take refuge in either philosophy, and they'll just get like muddy the waters with nebulous philosophical terms, or they'll just say, "Yeah, I just feel it. I just feel it in my heart." So where's that research led you to?
Well, I should point out that I started thinking about all this way back in graduate school. I was in a lab that my thesis advisor was Ted Bullock, and he's widely regarded as one of the founding fathers of what's called neuroethology. And ethology, without the neuro part, is the study of animal behavior in its natural context. The neuro part modifies it a little bit in that the idea is that understanding the brain is extremely difficult. It's a overwhelmingly complicated problem, so much so that the best way to approach it, at least from the standpoint of neuroethologists, is to find some animal that is highly specialized for a unique behavior that's well studied, well understood, like, for example, song learning in songbirds. You know the evolutionary purpose of it. You can study it and record the behavior very easily in a laboratory. And having thoroughly studied the behavior, then you're in a position to go into the brain and see how the brain solves this problem of learning the song from the parent and producing the song faithfully. So that's the strategy of neuroethology. And when I was reading that literature and studying that as a student, I began to see that a lot of the problems that ethologists tackle have to do with early and song learning in birds is one of them. They're interested in things that happen early in an animal's life, right after hatching, right after birth, whatever. And I began to see a lot of infantilism in religion. And of course, I'm not the first person to notice this. Freud pointed it out 100 years ago. But I don't think the scientists, especially the psychologists and anthropologists who care about religion and write about religion, have paid enough attention to it. So that's kind of the direction my thinking went in. What is this infantile dimension to religion? And could that explain this illusion, or as I call it, or the feeling of God's presence? That's kind of how I got into it.
Interesting. If I pull back just to half a second there, you were talking about the songbirds and how they're learning from the parents. Would that same field work also for a creature with a very physical adaptation? I'm thinking, for example, because songbirds they still have the physical cords, I guess, to sing, but it's something that's even more specialized. An animal, like, for example, the first one that came to mind is the with his finger that's built especially to grab grubs and stuff like that, or is it like more something that has to be taught from parent to child?
No, it doesn't have to be a learned behavior at all. It can be completely instinctive behavior. And the kind of animal you just mentioned, one with a physical adaptation, is excellent for this. Another great example, one that's classic neuroethological system, is the electrolocation, the electric sense in weakly electric fish. They live in kind of murky water. Their vision doesn't help them very much most of the time. But they have electric organs that produce electric fields in the water, and sensory cells in the skin that sense those electric fields. And when they're near another object, they can sense that object by distortions in the electric field. So in effect, they can see by this electric sense, which we can only try to wrap our minds around. We have nothing quite analogous to it. They also communicate with other members of their species using electric fields.
Yeah, like humans do have a bit of a heat
So that's another great.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So anyway, maybe that. I hope you can edit out what I'm about to say because I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm hearing your questions kind of broken up. I'm not sure if we can fix that or not.
No, everything seems to be working fine on our end.
You seem choppy on mine. Maybe it's just me.
Your signal was coming a bit choppy on your end. I think it's on your end, my friend. But we can work on that.
Okay, if you can hear me okay, and if I can just make out your questions, I think we'll do our best.
We'll do our best.
Have you seen that new study of where they were? I was reading in a magazine where certain chimpanzees, I think it was chimpanzees, were showing signs of religiosity or whatever, where they would leave offerings in like a tree trunk, and then almost like a religious type practice. Like, is that like?
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's just I just noticed in your book you were talking about how there's certain types of ways that we think that are just naturally inclined to our physiology, and I was just wondering if there's. I didn't see anything about the chimps in your book. I was just kind of curious if there's any relation there, but it doesn't sound like you're familiar with it, or you've heard the study.
No, I haven't seen that study. I'll have to look for that. That's a fascinating thing. I haven't heard of that behavior yet at all.
Yeah, it was
until now. That's fascinating.
I think it was within the last 2 or 3 years that the article that I read. But
yeah, they're talking about these chimpanzees are developing maybe some kind of proto-religion where all of a sudden there's a certain tree that seems more sacred to them. That seems they're taking care of it and everything, as compared to the other ones. So, which would be an insight into maybe humans evolving into religious faith as well.
Yeah, that's a fascinating thing. Yeah. I'll have to look for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to how humans perceive God, though, like if I look back at my own experience, like I was Christian for almost 40 years, and I did go through I was evangelical for a while, and it's I did have experiences where I could swear up and down I felt God's presence. And for me, it was actually like going through history and reading like how the scriptures were transmitted that kind of brought me to the fact that, okay, there's no way this can be real. But how the heck do I explain these feelings that I had that were extremely real when I proving to myself the mythology is fake, but the spirit is something that I can physically feel and see. I did a little bit of reading in the human brain and how we perceive things, and it's the best I could understand was like it's just a brain glitch. But for a layman to try to figure out what's happening inside the brain becomes extremely difficult. So so we're kind of relying on people like yourself who actually know all the details to try to bring a layman's perspective to explain like exactly what is it are we feeling when we think that we're being overwhelmed by a spirit or a presence, or we're being talked to, or thoughts are being brought into our brains or whatever. It's like. I have what I tell myself for that, but I'm kind of curious how would you explain that?
That's really the essence of what my new book is about. You've touched on really the core of what my book is about with that question. It's what many people I think have reached the same conclusion you have. Many atheists or agnostics have reached a similar conclusion that, okay, I have felt that loving presence of God, but that has to be a trick of the brain. It has to, or a glitch, as you put it, of the brain. It has to be something like that. What I have tried to do is to explain that in a more, but to put that on a more solid scientific footing, I guess I should say. And the first place to start, I think, is the observation that the brain works, or sensory perception works, in an interesting way. The sensory perception is never purely a result of information coming into the brain through the senses, through the eyes, the ears, the skin, whatever. It's always, in part, also mixed with what the brain is expecting. The expectations of the brain shape and refine and color everything that's coming through the senses. So we're never completely unbiased in our perception of reality. A great place to see that is in our perception of human faces. We are very sensitive to seeing and perceiving other people's faces. We're extremely good at this, and we're so good at it that we often see faces where there are no faces. We'll see faces in the clouds, in trees, in shadows on the rocks. We can see faces almost anywhere. There's a famous example I like to use in my talk of the face on Mars that showed up in a photograph from an orbiter around Mars in the 1970s. We're always doing this, and the reason for this is that it makes our perception more sensitive and more accurate in the case where the sensory information is degraded in some way. If it's incomplete, if it's noisy, if the image is in low light or whatever, the brain can fill in missing information, and that is often a life-saving thing in nature. There's a lot of selective pressure for it, but it means that we don't perceive reality in an unbiased way. So what I have suggested, I've offered this hypothesis that human newborns are born with an expectation of the existence of their mothers. And the reason for this is that the connection between a newborn and its mother in humans is extremely important. We're completely helpless at birth. We need to form a physical and an emotional connection with the mother, and she with us. And we're dependent on her for warmth, for protection, for nourishment, and for an emotional connection that is the foundation for learning to be a social animal throughout human life. So what I'm suggesting is that the brain of a newborn has this crude, innate model of what a human mother is, that she has a face, that she has a feminine voice, that she's loving, that she responds to crying, that she'll be there if you cry out for her, that your survival depends on her. And this crude model of a mother serves as a foundation for that connection. Now, I also suggest that the neural circuitry for this innate model of the mother persists into adulthood, but normally lies dormant. But in an adult, under conditions that can mimic the helplessness and desperation of infancy, this circuitry can be activated. And when it is, we can get this illusion from the brain's expectation of the existence of this other being. We have this feeling that there must be a primordial savior out there, and it's so real and compelling that it feels like something or someone you could just reach out and touch. It's that real. That, I suggest, is where the illusion of God's presence comes from. And in that sense, you can think of it almost like the phantom limb of an amputee. It's a phantom sensation, where in the case of an amputee, the brain is expecting the existence of the amputated limb, say a hand. And that expectation is so vivid, so intense, that it's almost impossible to make it go away. The amputee will describe it as something that, yes, I know it's consciously, I know it's not there. I know it's an illusion, but it still feels real. I can't make the feeling go away. Mm-hmm. And I think the illusion of God
doesn't that have to do with the nervous system,
real
though?
For people.
Doesn't that have to do with the nervous system, though? Like I have a type of fibromyalgia where it's either we won't go off onto a tangent, but something that I've kind of like for my own personal conclusions to explain this, and I just want to put it out there to see how it aligns with your thoughts. Is my observation is when the human brain is kind of worked up into a state of hysteria, it can be hacked and fooled and tricked into believing anything. So like if we're at a concert and we're all worked up, we feel like a sensation of the music going through us. If we're hysteric in a haunted house, then all of a sudden we're seeing things that aren't really there, or thinking things are much worse than they actually are. If we've been worshiping and praying and going through all the behaviors, working ourselves up into a state of hysteria, then all of a sudden it's like we become susceptible to these ideas of the euphoric, because like if you get yourself hysteric enough, you're going to start releasing chemicals. You can get a state of euphoria. then if you're told that that feeling is God, then you're automatically going to think that like associate those feelings with God, because your brain doesn't have enough information to know what you're feeling. So it's you kind of just fill in the blanks. But that's not the best description on my end. But does that is that in line with what you're saying, or but like in a novice kind of way? Or
yeah, absolutely. That's very perceptive, actually. That in describing it to you just a minute ago, I said that this feeling can come on during moments of desperate helplessness and crisis, and that's often how it happens, but not always. And what you just described is a situation that is also fairly common when you're at a religious service or a revival meeting or whatever, or even, like you said, a concert somewhere. Then you're in an emotional state in some way. You can easily be the power of suggestion is very potent in that situation, and skilled preachers know this and know how to use it. And there's a reason that religious worship services almost always include music and rousing hymns, words
lots
in the
of
hymns,
flashing lights, overstimulation.
God, the loving parent, the who's always there to save you. Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling. There's infantile imagery laced throughout most religious services, and the sermons, the liturgy, whatever it is, Bible verses are selected to give you this feeling of comfort and salvation and expectation. So the power of suggestion definitely can help trigger this feeling.
I've got
a question. I need to dig a bit deeper into this whole infantilizing aspect of religion. If that is the case, and we are programmed, of course, like you said, to seek out your mother's affection and all that, why are all these religions today that are so popular more patriarchal in nature and not matriarchal in nature? Why are all these gods like strong men figures and not motherly figures?
Yeah, great question. I haven't even mentioned that yet, but I start off in the book with a chapter that's titled "Why is God Two-Faced?", which is basically the question you're getting at. Why do believers tell you their God will damn you to hell, yet in the same breath insist that he loves you unconditionally? How can they be so blind to that contradiction, as many believers are? The reason I suggest is that there are two selective pressures behind religion that have sort of made religion in some deep fundamental way two-dimensional. One of those selective pressures is the one we've been talking about, this infantile dimension of religion, where God is seen like a loving parent, a nurturing, unconditionally loving, saving parent. The other is where God is seen as fearsome, judgmental, cruel, punishing, patriarchal, authoritarian. That kind of God, I think, comes from a completely different place in our evolutionary history, which has to do with human tribal behavior. That is that can easily be traced far back in our primate ancestry, far beyond the hominids in the past. You can still see it. You can still see that very clearly in chimpanzees, for example, in their dominance hierarchy and in their submission to the alpha male. This is God as alpha male. And you can find, for example, the book Alpha God is a good example of this idea. This is the God that most of the scientific literature on religion has focused on, the God that is central to human social behavior. And the selective pressure there is that the phenomenon of reciprocal altruism that characterizes human social behavior requires a great deal of brain power. You need to keep track of who is contributing to the group and who is cheating and being selfish. You need to kind of keeps score for everybody else in the group in terms of their willingness to cooperate, to share, to contribute to the hunt, whatever it is. That, as the size of the group increases, that just becomes unworkable. But religion offers a nice way to sort of work around that. If the religion demands costly, painful sacrifices as proof of belief, hard to fake sacrifices, then showing fealty to the gods, showing loyalty to the gods, is a good proxy for loyalty to the social group. And anyone who goes through those motions of paying homage to the gods, making sacrifices to the gods, mutilating their genitals, all these painful sacrifices that we see in religions, then you've demonstrated that you're worthy of acceptance and that you're a cooperating member of the tribe. And this is where the cruel, punishing, authoritarian generally male figure of God comes from. So we have these two sources, and both of them contribute to our ideas about God in most religions. They're always kind of in conflict with one another because they are contradictory in nature. And it's interesting to see when a religion tries to suppress one at the expense of the other, or to the benefit of the other. They'll try to emphasize one and suppress another. And even in those cases, the other one keeps sort of creeping back in on its own. Catholicism is a good example. It's a very patriarchal religion. God is referred to as Father. It's seen as male. Priests can only be men. They don't allow women in the upper echelons of the clergy. And yet, despite all of that, the feminine side of God creeps into the religion surreptitiously in the form of the veneration of the Virgin Mary, for example, who Catholics pray to for intercession between themselves and God the Father, or in the form of Catholic saints who outnumber the female saints outnumber the males 2-1 in Catholicism. Mm-hmm. So there's always this interplay, and it's almost impossible to suppress the feminine or the masculine side of God completely.
And also too, just based on antiquity, like back when like the primitive pagan religions, when they didn't have an understanding of how life came into the world. And so women were venerated as life givers. And they were also venerated as being goddesses of death, because that's the primitive cultures kind of started to make those connections and, put a pattern together, basically. And then over time, and especially because men were the warriors and they were seen as protectors of the tribe, it led to a veneration of the male as protector of tribes. And that's another reason why there's theories in antiquity of the goddess cults kind of going away, and those male-dominated religions started creeping in, even in paganism and those sort of things, because of the fact that males started becoming leaders and protectors within social groups, within their own tribes and stuff. Because religion started very tribal in the beginning and then expanded out.
Is it fair to say, to back up on what Helen was saying here, that if we were a species that was more cooperative and less competitive, then maybe more biggest religions today would be matriarchal in nature? I know it's speculation, but is it fair to say that?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say. It's a little hard to rewind our evolutionary history as a thought experiment, but those two things, cooperation and competition, are almost impossible to separate. They're almost two sides of the same coin. Cooperation within the group is just as strong and just as necessary in our early hunter-gatherer existence as competition with other competing tribes. So we have this thing where we being attacked by a competing tribe that's competing for territory or whatever, fosters competition, fosters cooperation within the in-group more than just about anything else. We still see that today in human society, that being attacked from the outside is the thing that unites us more than almost anything else. We saw that most vividly on 9/11 when we had the terrorist attacks. And to my recollection, anyway, in my lifetime, I'd never seen Americans so united in spirit as immediately in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. The political divisions and so on just sort of melted away when we were all Americans. It's sad to see us.
There was a lot of anger
now
at that
in the
time,
state
too.
we are, so tribal again. But oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that was the competition. That was the anger at the out group. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's separation of church and state kind of flew out the window when the president said something along the lines of they don't worship the real God, we do, or it's I forget the exact saying, but it's all of a sudden it's like we went from being like different political bodies with different religions to whose God's better than the other, and it just seems like that kind of took civilization backwards a little bit, because all of a sudden it's like here we are, the year 2000, and you have like a holy war going on. You have zealots on one side of the ocean saying that their God's better than ours, and then we have fundamentalists on this side of the ocean saying that our God is better than theirs. And it just seems like sometimes we find ourselves moving backwards instead of forward. But
well, we all know the flying spaghetti monster is the best one, right?
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, they have a bear volcano in heaven, so it's like that's a seller.
I feel bad because I cut off Brent Lee early on. Brent Lee had a question too.
Oh yeah. I was thinking it was, you kind of tied a bow for me about because there's two different types of indoctrination, right? You've got indoctrinated from birth, right, and then you have this indoctrination that comes out of desperation. And I never really tied the two together. I was always like, that's weird that these two types of indoctrinations exist. But you like tied that together by saying the reason that that you get that early indoctrination or that early sensation of God is because of the desperation that you have as an infant, and that mother and father figure, like they rectify that. They make it, they take care of you and stuff. So it's interesting that the church, like the church I went to, they always would target people. They'd be like, whatever you're going through, if you're at the bottom of your, rope, we have a solution just for you, and he loves you. And it's so interesting that I never was able to tie those two things together. And like you totally hit the nail on the head and and totally tied that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that explains a lot. It doesn't explain everything about religion, but it does explain a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you don't know Jack. He's got the answers. He's got the answers to the question.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So go for it, Joy.
No, I was just remembering one part of where you were talking about false memories when it comes to religion too. How it's like, or how we'll think that we experience one thing, or we'll remember experiencing one thing, or we can find ourselves in a repeated sense of deja vu from just not recalling events properly, or recalling events how we want to remember them. So I was just going to bring that up, or see if I can get you to go into a little bit more detail on how that affects someone's religiosity, or how religious they are.
Yeah. That what you're referring to. You're referring to a part of the book where I'm trying to get at where in the brain do we have a sense of certainty? Where does the feeling of certainty come from? A scientist has to learn through years of training how to know, how to understand what it means to know something. It's different from the sort of the colloquial idea of knowing that we grow up with as kids. For a scientist, it takes a lot of effort to know something. You have to think of as many possible alternative explanations for something you're trying to understand as you can come up with. And you have to try to come up with experiments that you can do to test these alternative explanations that can distinguish between them. Things you can actually go out and test in reality and convince yourself that, okay, explanations A, B, and C cannot possibly be true because these experiments contradict them. So what we're left with is the only other one, and that one has to be our best approximation of truth right now. That's the way scientists get a feeling of certainty. And we usually always hedge our bets. We always, probabilistic terms, we say 95% confidence or whatever. The human intuition does something completely different. We have an intuitive feeling of certainty about things that just comes to us seemingly from nowhere, and it's hard to grasp where that comes from or what it is. But most people, when they get that feeling, just accept it. They just take it as you know, I feel certain about it, therefore it's true. That's all the evidence they need, and that can be for making decisions, for difficult, complex decisions. That intuitive feeling of certainty can be helpful. It can lead you to make good decisions sometimes, but it's not very useful as a truth-finding mechanism, and that's something that I was trying to get at in that part of the book. And the way I try to approach, you know, where in the brain is this happening? Where does this feeling of certainty come from, and how can we distinguish that from scientific certainty? There are some experiments that have tried to address this, and one of them is a memory experiment where the subject is given a list of words, and these words come from a category, for example, farm animals, and you're shown a list of words that might say pig and chicken or whatever. So or horse, you know, some list of words describing animals that you'd see on a farm. And then in a second phase of the experiment, they're just asked to categorize the words that they see. Then later on, they're shown more words in random sequence, and they're asked whether or not they saw these words in the previous phase of the experiment. So now in the second phase, they may be shown the word cow, which they were not shown in the first phase of the experiment. Mm-hmm. But because cow has a very strong association with farm animals, and they knew that they saw a category farm animals during the first phase of the experiment, they'll say, yes, I saw that, because that feeling of certainty comes to them. Okay, you can do this experiment in an fMRI machine and see where in the brain this false feeling of certainty is coming from. It turns out it comes from a very interesting part of the brain. It's distributed like most things are, but one of the places that's very active during this is the temporoparietal junction, where the temporal lobe and the parietal lobe come together. And that happens, that's a fascinating part of the human brain. There's a lot of different things. But when you're having, and I should say at this point that when you're having a true memory, not in the same experiment, when you're recalling something that you actually did experience in the previous phase, then what mostly lights up in the brain is the hippocampus, which is a place that's important for memory storage and recall. Yeah. So a real memory shows up differently in the brain than this false memory does. I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that question.
Well, I was going to say polygraphs kind of work that way, don't they? They measure which parts of the brain are active to determine whether or not you're recalling something from your memory or from your imagination. Or am I...
A polygraph, you said?
Yeah, like a lie detector. Like lie detectors.
The lie detector is a much simpler, cruder thing than the fMRI. The lie detectors go back almost 100 years. It's a very old
they've changed a lot
technology,
too.
and all it does is, the main thing it does is that, I'm sure they could do a more sophisticated, elaborate version of it, and probably people have tried to do exactly what you're asking about. Can you use an fMRI machine as a lie detector? The polygraph is mainly measuring things like heart rate and respiration and skin conductance, things like that. In principle, you might be able to. What I was interested in here in this study was the distinction between not a deliberate attempt at falsification, but at the brain's attempt at filling in missing information with a sense of certainty about something that actually never happened. And there, the temporoparietal junction is critical for that. And I went into detail in the book to talk about that, because that same area of the brain is critical for the sense of physical embodiment, both your sense of ownership of your own body and your interpretation of what other people are doing with their bodies, for the people that you see. And if you apply direct electrical stimulation in this part of the brain, and this is something that's done sometimes for epileptic patients before neurosurgery, on occasion, they will experience the illusion of a sensed presence. They'll say, I feel another person behind me or beside me. And they can't explain exactly how they know the person is there. It's not like they're having a visual hallucination. They just feel the presence of another person. And in one case that I talk about in the book, the subject was actually misperceiving her own body as the presence of another person. When she was asked to do something like sit up in bed and clasp her arms around her raised knees, she felt that the other person who was sitting behind her had put their hands around her and were sort of holding her around the front part of her chest. So she, found this very disturbing and everything. And every time the neurologist would put her in a different position, the illusory sensed presence was in an analogous position. So it was faithfully mimicking her own body and her own position, her own movements. But she could not get through the illusion that it was another person. She could not see that it was her own body that she was misperceiving. She always interpreted it as another person. And this was only when the temporoparietal junction was being electrically stimulated. So here we have in one part of the brain the place where you can get the illusion of a sensed presence and the illusion of certainty that seems to come out of nowhere and that can be and is incorrect. That gives you a certainty about false memories, for example. So I thought that connection was critical and interesting.
So does that feed
because
into?
We have a sense of the certainty of the existence.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
I'm sorry. We have it. I
was just going to say delay that's throwing everybody off.
Of our mother's existence. Yeah. We have a little bit of a delay here, but anyway. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does this relate to magical thinking and people using that as a way to make decisions or have certainty in their lives? Because there are plenty of people that don't have religious belief, but they use magical thinking to make some sort of meaning out of their lives. So I'm just curious how that relates within the brain and why do we do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure I have the best answer for that, but partly what we've just been discussing plays into it, I think. That you have this intuitive feeling of certainty that can just come to you seemingly out of nowhere. There's a fascinating psychological study by a guy named Shane, if I'm trying to remember his name, Shane Frederick, I think is his name. He developed what's called the cognitive reflection test, and it's a collection of a few math problems. So the initial version of the test was 3 math problems, and they were deliberately designed to be misleading, to suggest incorrect answers. And people who tend to rely on intuition will tend to give you the incorrect but intuitively appealing answer to these math problems. Whereas people who resist intuition and use cognitive reflection for making decisions and solving problems will take longer to do the test, but they'll tend to actually go through the logic, the reasoning, the arithmetic, and come up with the correct answer. So with these 3, and it's not even correlated with mathematical level of education or mathematical talent or whatever, your ability on a normal average math test. It's not so much correlated with that as it is with your tendency to rely on intuition. So I think what distinguishes the magical thinkers from the critical thinkers or the skeptics is mostly that. It's mostly this tendency to be skeptical of their own intuition, not to rely on intuition so easily or so readily. There is, by the way, one part of the brain that does distinguish between those two. It's in the inferior frontal gyrus, on the side opposite to Broca's area, the speech area. Broca's area is also in the inferior frontal gyrus on the left hemisphere. The inferior frontal gyrus on the right hemisphere is the activity there in many subjects distinguishes between this reliance on intuition and skepticism, between magical thinking and critical thinking. There is a study on that. I bring that up late in the book where I'm trying to tease apart what are the relative contributions of the left and right sides of the brain to religious belief. It's a complicated question, much more complicated than you might think.
Jack, I've got one last question here. We're running against the clock. You've been very generous with your time. We're a social species, and going back on infantilizing the species to bring religious thought into action here, as we are evolving our society and we're becoming more and more interdependent, will this replace the need for a protector God down the road? I mean, I understand as a child you still will always have that need for your mother to protect you. But as we grow up as a society, as we become more and more interconnected and more one world, does this have the potential to replace the need for a savior God? I know it's speculation, but what do you think?
That is a very good, some research on that. What I have been talking about in my book and in this conversation are the innate, heritable aspects that contribute to religiousness. But that, of course, is not the whole story, and we all know this, that our experience throughout life, whether or not our parents are religious or religious indoctrination, how religious the society around us is, all of these things are important, and they all contribute. And what you're asking about specifically is how well does society basically meet the needs of its citizens? How reliable is it as a caregiver? How often are people allowed to fall into a gutter of desperation and poverty and helplessness and starvation? In more sort of socialistic democracies like we see in the Scandinavian countries, where there's a good social safety net and kind of a lower disparity between the most extreme wealth and the most extreme poverty or destitution. In those societies, there seems to be something happening very much akin to what you're suggesting. There's a less need for divine salvation, less need for a savior to pray to, because there are fewer people who are desperate. So I think there may be something to that. But because there are these innate factors as well, I doubt we will ever be free of religion. I doubt it will ever just fade away to zero. I think it will always crop up to some degree. But maybe the Scandinavian countries, which do tend to be more agnostic and atheistic and less religious than ours, I think they may be showing some hint of what the future could hold.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Jack, thank you so much for being with us on the show. I really appreciate it. The book is The Phantom God. If people want to find out, where can they get your book, Jack?
You can find it on Amazon.com. You can go to my website, also watheyresearch.com, where I have some blog posts and articles and essays and things like that that will tell you a little more about that book and its predecessor. I have 2 books now, actually, sort of on taking different approaches to the similar subject.
Excellent. Jack, thank you so much for being with us on the show. Before I let you go, of course, as usual, I got to have you say, hi, this is Jack Wathey, and I took a left at the valley.
Hi, this is Jack Wathey, and I took a left at the valley.